Hello again, everybody. So, next lesson for U.S. wars. This will be the last lesson in the interwars time period leading up into World War II. So, this is the last lesson before we hit spring break. After spring break, we'll actually be diving into World War II itself. Now, if you do not know what the word appeasement means, well, there's actually two vocab words there that I'm pretty sure a lot of you are not very familiar with. You have the term appeasement, and you also have the word apathy. So the term appeasement is the idea that you give someone something that they want in order to get them to stop complaining so much. Like a good example is just a simple one. Parents going to the grocery store. You got a 2-year-old kid that sees a lollipop, screams her head off until mom, from a point of basically probably embarrassment and exasperation, just gets a lollipop and gives it to the kid, and then buys it on the way out. Now, in simple situations like that, yeah, maybe it was okay. But the idea is if that happens every single time, then that kid becomes entitled, learns that they can just push the button. They know how to kind of work their mom over. And I'm pretty dang sure a lot of you listening to this right now probably have nice ways of knowing how to work over your own parents, kind of either play them off of each other or do things in a way to know you're going to get what you want, essentially. That's what appeasement means. Now, again, that doesn't seem such an awful thing. Maybe at the level we're talking about, kind of like the family level, still could be. But on a global level, with nations, it can be, well, it has a very negative connotation today. Essentially, if you give an evil guy what he wants, he's just going to get more. And the person we're going to be talking about most today is we're going to be talking about Adolf Hitler and what the Allied nations do to appease him. Just know this lesson could be a lot longer. I'm just going to be focusing on him because it does teach the concept well. But there was a lot of appeasement towards guys like Benito Mussolini of Italy. There was appeasement towards Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union. There was appeasement towards the Japanese as well, and where the Allies just didn't want to deal with things. So they let them take what they wanted. They let them get what they wanted. These dictators I'm talking about, like the dictators get what they want, just so they didn't have to deal with the idea of a world war. And of course, what we see throughout history is the idea that, well, war came anyways. So what if they didn't appease them in the first place? What if they stopped these evil guys in their tracks? The big question is, would World War II really have happened? That is a question we're not going to get into. It's very subjective, and of course it's based off of so many what ifs. Anyways, we're not going to go there. Now, the next term that you may not know there is apathy. Apathy just means a sense of uncaring, that you choose to not care. And I wouldn't doubt it if many of you, hopefully if you're watching this lesson, there's probably a lot of those that are not watching this lesson, have a huge sense of apathy at the moment. You just don't care anymore, especially like we use the term senioritis for seniors going into the very end of the school year. That is just another way of saying idea of apathy. You just don't want to do anything. You don't even care about the consequences. You want to do nothing. So there's how those two terms go. But moving on to this appeasement stuff, especially when it comes to Germany. Okay. Now, notice how it says appeasement first offense. I'm going to be going through 4 major things. There's more. But 4 major things that are seen as like these steps up to World War II where people just kind of roll over and give Hitler what he wants. Now, just looking at those pictures there, I'm hoping you can kind of guess what is being appeased here. So if you remember at the end, we've actually talked about this in the previous videos here leading up to this one too, but back in the World War I videos, we talked about during the Treaty of Versailles, the Germans were told they could not rearm, meaning no Navy, no Air Force, no big armies. And what are you seeing in those pictures? Big Navy, Air Force, tanks, and big armies. Essentially, Germany does rearm. Hitler chooses to just say, basically, screw you to the Treaty of Versailles. I'm not going to follow this. This was unfair in the first place, and we shouldn't have lost the war, World War I in the first place anyway. So basically snubs his nose at the Allies and builds a big military. Hey, more soldiers, tanks, and better tanks, like not tanks like the first British one that only went like 1.5 miles per hour. These are tanks that can go somewhere at times upwards around 45, 50 miles per hour depending on the tank. Usually average speeds are around like in the 30 to 40 range if I remember correct. I know a couple of you know a ton on that one. Maybe you can basically educate people down in the comments or something. on what the speeds of different tanks were at the beginning, these first tanks that they had at the beginning of World War II. So, not the ones at the end. There was a big difference between, there's a lot of tank development in World War II. Anyways, they make a lot of planes. New planes, by the way. They essentially, Germany revolutionizes air warfare in a way. You move from the biplane to kind of the single wing planes, and you get the idea of dive bombers and stuff. Then they start building a big navy. And one of the main reasons they build a big navy is Hitler himself is still feeling like we need this big empire. We need, and of course, to control a big empire, you need a big navy, and we're going to have to challenge the British Navy. So he is actually, when it comes to the Navy, still more in a World War I style thinking. He has people in his inner circle that realize that's not the way it goes, and one of them, a guy named Admiral Donuts, is able to convince him to start building submarines instead of massive navies. But one of the big ifs, by the way, what if he would have convinced Hitler earlier to build more submarines instead of battleships? How would have World War II gone? Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry. Main idea here is they're building a huge army. And what do the Allies do? Essentially, what does Britain and France do? Okay. I'll read this out for you. Just know this is a Mr. Harrison quote. I know I put in quotations, but this is myself taking everything that's going on and the sentiments of the British and French and just kind of putting into one thing. Just the idea of like, we were mean to Germany. Maybe we should let them build up the biggest army in the world. That should make them happy. I'm sure they're just doing it for the fun of it. This is choosing, they're being appeasing, and they would rather be apathetic about it. They want to ignore the fact that Germany is getting a big army again. Maybe it's just a self-esteem thing. They won't really mean to do anything with that. Okay. When you're talking about big empires and world domination, that's a really bad conclusion to come to. And historically speaking, definitely a bad conclusion to come to. But this is the thought process. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to let it slide by because we can't deal with it. Now, I will say that one of the reasons why they just really couldn't deal with it is the Great Depression is going on. They have a lot of problems at home. They can't really deal with problems abroad, and so they just don't want to deal with them. Now, the second offense. If you're looking at that map on the right, that whole yellow area is what's known as the Rhineland. We talked about this again at the end of World War I. This is a demilitarized zone, and even specific areas there were actually under occupation by the French army, even into the 1930s. There's tons of factories there. And Hitler needs those factories. So Hitler pulls a huge bluff. He tells his newly formed army, which is definitely not as well equipped yet as the French army is, he says, hey, I want you to walk in there and just occupy the zone and see what the French do. If the French put up any type of resistance, back off. We don't want to take them on yet. But maybe they'll give it to us. And that's exactly what happened. The French just gave it to him. In fact, the French president sent a call down saying, don't engage, and in fact, back off, essentially. So the Germans are able to get in there. The pictures you see down at the bottom, the people there are incredibly happy to see the German military. It's a very nationalistic thing to happen. It's a rising of national self-esteem. Look at the picture. Everybody's congratulating Adolf Hitler. He's actually driving the Rhineland there, and they're just loving the fact of what he did. To kind of return that area to full German control. Now, the French president talks to Adolf Hitler and essentially says, hey, do you promise not to use these factories for military production? And Hitler says, oh yeah, we just need them to build up our economy in this Great Depression. So the French president is like, all right, you can have them back. So he moves the French army out. Within just a few months, Hitler retools almost all those factories for military production. And the French do nothing. The English do nothing. Again, they have a lot of problems at home, but still, that is a gigantic middle finger towards the Allies there, and a huge warning sign saying, this is what's about to come your way. Just a few more years, give it 5 more years, and you're about to get slapped in the face. So, by the way, this is taking place 1933, 1934. God, I just forget my years, and I'm sorry about that. Now, the third one. If you're looking at this, I have a few pictures in here. Maybe you can kind of guess at it. If you recognize that picture in the middle with the nice lady kind of running in the mountains. If you do not know that movie, that is Sound of Music. But that movie is based off of one of the acts of appeasement that happens during World War II. And this is one of the odd ones. It's where, like, is it appeasement or was it just like, it's normal? Well, from today looking back, we definitely view this as appeasement. Essentially what happened is the area of Czechoslovakia, or sorry, not the area of Czechoslovakia, the area of Austria that you're looking at there. Let's see here. This is Austria. Austrians are Germanic, ethnically Germanic. And again, one of the goals of Adolf Hitler is to create a united German peoples and German empire, and that would include all German-speaking peoples. And actually, if you did not know this, Adolf Hitler was born in Austria. He is an Austrian, but he definitely he really liked Germany a lot. And of course, he felt German because Austrians are Germanic to this day. They're Germanic. The only difference is the nationalities, Austrian versus German. Well, he's able to get a referendum put up in Austria where people actually can vote, hey, let's just get rid of Austria. Why have a border there? Why can't we just be one greater Germany with all German-speaking peoples? And this is put to a vote. And in the vote, 80%, and there's no foul play here. There didn't need to be foul play. Hitler is a hero to everyone, not just in Germany, but outside of Europe as well. It's like he's able to fix a country in the middle of depression where everybody else is having problems. Even here in the United States, there are great fans of Adolf Hitler in the 1930s thinking he could save us like he saved Germany. The Austrians are thinking the same thing. In fact, they're like, hey, he's one of us. He's an Austrian. We're all Germans. Yeah, this is great. Yes, we've been separate countries for hundreds of years. Separate peoples, you could say, hundreds of years, but we really have more in common than we don't. So let's get together. So 80% actually vote to have Austria dissolve and just become part of the Greater German Empire. Or Greater Germany, I guess you could say. I don't know if we can call it an empire just yet. The Story of the Sound of Music is based on this, because there were a few that saw the writing on the wall. Again, true story is of the Von Trapp family. Just to give a simple thing here, if you've seen the movie. Baron von Trapp realized that no, he didn't like this. He didn't like his country being taken over, and he also did not like the Nazis. And he kind of saw through the facade and realized where this was going to like the style of totalitarian state he just didn't want to deal with. Now, he is a very rich guy, by the way, and he decides to just leave it all. Now, this is kind of how it goes down, is actually after Anschluss happens. I should have write that up there, by the way. That's the term for this. The connecting of Austria into Germany is called Anschluss. After Anschluss happens, Baron von Trapp is approached by someone representing the German Navy. I need to be looking up my stories here a little bit. But yeah, basically, someone from the German Navy comes up and says, hey, we heard the great job you did as a submarine commander in World War I. But he was a submarine commander in World War I. We want you to be part of the new Navy that we're building, And, the people that were coming to speak to him, didn't think anything of the idea that Baron von Trapp didn't like what was going on. The movie makes it seem like that way, but it wasn't that way. They had no clue that he had a lot of misgivings, at least from the accounts that I've gone through. And so he says, sure, I'll join you. Just give me a week. I'm going to go and take a vacation with my family, and then I'll come report for duty. So he takes a vacation with his family into the Swiss Alps, a ski vacation, and they just ski down to Switzerland. They leave everything. This is one of those stories that as Americans we hover around. It's like, yeah, people were willing to leave everything, even their riches, to come to a land of liberty, essentially. Because he gets to Switzerland, then I think they go to France, and from France they're able to get passage over here to the United States, and they start everything from scratch here. Anyways, if you want to look up the story in that, you can. It's a good story, and in a way, it's deserved to be made into a movie. It's just one of those things that people did to kind of reject the tyranny of the time. So, but this is the third offense: the idea of Germany just going and saying, "Hey, we're going to take control of you." Now, the reason why we call this appeasement, it leads into this next one. Notice I'm using kind of the same map there. Although you notice that Austria is now part of Germany, but you still have that area of red, like this area right here. What that is that in the country of Czechoslovakia, there were areas where it's pretty much all Germans, German-speaking peoples. It's what's called the Sudetenland. Now, there's about 3 million German peoples that live in those red areas. And Hitler comes out and says that they're being mistreated. They're being persecuted. In fact, he can't stand for it anymore. He has a moral duty to invade Czechoslovakia and make sure that his fellow German-speaking peoples are being taken care of. Of course, this is definitely going over the line, and the British and French cannot let this one go. They actually finally do something. So what they do is they hold what's called the Munich Conference, and Benito Mussolini is even invited up. He mediates it. Yeah, I talk about an unbiased mediator there. I'm being very sarcastic. But essentially they tell Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of Britain, and the French President, again, I'm forgetting his name, I'm sorry, you can look it up. They basically tell Hitler, so if we let you have Czechoslovakia, do you promise never to do something like this again? That you'll never invade a sovereign country again? We'll always solve things through diplomatic means instead. And Hitler says, sure, give me Czechoslovakia and I won't do this again. I just have this moral duty to protect these people. In fact, I will leave once I feel like the German-speaking peoples there have been taken care of the way they need to be. So, by the way, no one from Czechoslovakia was really invited to this conference. So that didn't make them feel very happy. Anyways, the quote I just brought up there is a famous quote by Neville Chamberlain. And he was trying to do what he thought was best. He's trying to avoid a world war, but essentially he comes back and just says, and there's a picture at the bottom there, my good friends, for the second time in our history, a British Prime Minister has returned from Germany bringing peace with honor. I believe it is peace for our time. Not knowing that shortly after this, World War II will start. Neville Chamberlain, as well-intentioned he is, has gone down in history as looking a bit of a buffoon at this point. Anyways, but again, basically he was a good guy, just the wrong guy in the wrong time type thing. So, anyways, this is the fourth major offense of appeasement, where they just kind of let Hitler get what he wants. Now, this next one is kind of appeasement, but at the same time, it's more goes to the apathy side. A British journalist learns of something called the Nazi-Soviet Peace Pact. This is where Hitler and Stalin both want the country of Poland. They want to invade and take it over. But they don't want to fight each other over it yet. They realize they don't want to take their titanic armies that they've been building up. And I've only been talking about Germany and their build-up. The Soviet Union's been building up big time as well. They don't want to go against each other yet. So even though they hate each other, this is probably the greatest feud of all time, is Hitler versus Stalin. It's definitely number one on my list. No feud is bigger than the Hitler versus Stalin list and the type of destruction it caused in World War II. But anyways, in the very beginning, they act like friends. This is one of those things where, like, you shake hands, but you have your other hand behind your back with your fingers crossed saying, I'm going to break my promise. But they basically say, hey, we're both going to invade Poland, and once Poland is surrendered, we'll actually divide it. And they actually had a preset line it was divided to. In fact, when they do get to the invasion of Poland, which, by the way, it's called the Nazi-Soviet Peace Pact. I will comment on that picture of the marriage. So if you don't understand a little bit the context around that, in Germany, the people of Germany always referred to their country as the fatherland, with the male gender. Whereas in Russia, they refer to Russia as the motherland, the female gender. So when they see the fatherland and the motherland getting married, of course, Stalin's portrayed as the wife, and Hitler as the groom. So, Stalin is the bride and Hitler is the groom. Anyways, so of course this all goes down. By the way, I was led into that by saying there was a British reporter that actually found out about it. He told the newspapers, and the French and British just ignored it, like, no, that's not really happening. No, that can't be right. And just a week and a half later, after that was discovered, the Germans invade Poland. And a week after the Germans invade Poland, the Russians invade Poland. And what was the excuses they used? That they were going to protect. Sorry, that's just talking about the invasion of Poland by Stalin too. And this is considered the beginning of World War II. But Hitler said, I need to protect the German-speaking peoples of Poland. And there were a lot, even more than in the Sudetenland that we just talked about. And Stalin does the exact same thing. And he says, I need to protect the Russian-speaking peoples. Like, that's scary stuff. Just to give you a bit of a side note on that one, those are excuses being used today. If you do not know about the Russia hostile takeover of Crimea that happened back in 2014, 2015, I don't even know if the United States government recognizes this, but Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, said he took over the Crimea because he needed to protect the Russian-speaking peoples there, and that it was okay for Russia to support the rebels in the Ukrainian civil war because there are Russian-speaking peoples there. Like, it's an obvious power grab by Putin and the Russians, but he's doing it off of the moral basis that he's protecting Russian-speaking peoples, that he feels like he has a nationalistic and ethnic duty to do so. And this is what Stalin and Hitler did to start World War II, actually. Kind of creepy when you think about it that way. So, anyways, when we get to the next lesson, which you won't have for over a week here because we got spring break, we'll be getting into World War II. But this is the official beginning of World War II, is the invasion of Poland by Germany. Now, we always say by Germany, but we never say by the Soviet Union. We kind of let that one go because we become allies with the Soviet Union in World War II. And so we just kind of let things like this slide under the carpet a little bit. Anyways, I'll let it end there. I hope you guys have a great spring break. I'll see you later.